only mission in life to get away from the Adamites and the black devil helpers messing with the white light. Other religion, the wicked don't need tarot cards. I'm looking karate in the dark. I stay on my lahaj, learning, speaking, and reading. And one day I'll teach it to those that want it and those that need it. The master teacher will be happy to see him, and he knows that we love him because we fight hard for his freedom. With love and unity, our shield is the key to the sanctuary of that man. Shamus Kawun man. What does this mean? That means he has his own land, away from gossip and slander, evil, tripping and power. Where you need to be worried about the meteorite showers and them fireballs knocking down them walls. It's over, y'all. We want Babylon fall. In other words, get out the way. And when Baba comes home, we'll build a bigger jamboree. I visualize the master with diplomatic stats, flying back to Africa on a private jet, rocking a Rolex, holding doctrine classes, filled with laughter, teaching online, reaching the masses. It's a brand new day, it's a brand new chapter. We escape the gun clappers and the natural disasters, and those that's mad at us, slandering black devil bastards that thought they had us. I've been dreaming, skipping, I'm leaving the land of demons. Residual is needed. The master teacher gave us tools when he dropped those shoes. The reformer and the warner of this day in time. Just look around and pay attention, you'll see the signs. So what you gonna do when there's a food shortage and no source of income to be supported? Tamarack was our safe zone. When the master come home, we'll have a new home.
Okay, roll back. It's roll back. We're gonna get started. Okay, all right. It's a new week. It's a lot to cover that we're gonna go into today. Very important subject matter. Very important topic. Let's see. We're talking about the Secret government. All right, so let's see where we at. Okay, for those who do not know me, my name is Peti Sina Tebtu Urae, and I've been over a 30-year student teacher of the profound doctrine of the master teacher, known to us as Padabab Yananan, also known as Dr. Malachi Z.K. York, who has been teaching us our ancient culture. We identify as Wu-Sabat, also known as Wu-Nawat, which stands for those who make decisions based on sound right reasoning, based on the principles of Ma'at, based on the wisdom of the Hutri. In essence, our culture is about living in harmony with natural nature as our ancestors once did. We argue that the challenges that Black people are dealing with all over the world are due to us living foreign cultures that we've been introduced to almost over 6,000 years ago. And we've been on a downward spiral to where we are now, where we've lost power, world respect, control over our own land and resources. And we argue this is all due to the fact that we've gotten away from our original culture, which allowed us to build our great phenomenal societies that we used to live by and control. And we say that the only way we're going to fix our problem is getting away from the foreign cultures that is the root cause of our bad decisions, and getting back to our original culture, which we call Wu-Sabat, also known as Wu-Nawap, also NoopooH. It is an ancient culture that goes back to ancient Kemet, that actually originate with pre-dynastic Egypt. And this is what we're teaching. And I'm just one of many students across the globe who have dedicated themselves to trying to re-educate our people on about this culture and why it's important and why it's significant. I always like to say I'm not above making mistakes. So if I do make any errors or mistakes, do not hesitate to correct me. I have no problem in correcting any mistakes that I do. So I think that's important for you guys to know. Now, and getting started, every week we go over our principles of our culture that we live by. The core principles of Wu-Sabat / Wu-Nawab, right? Principle number one is Ashak, and Ashak stands for the power of love. In that sense, we argue that this is the first key towards us correcting ourselves, is getting back to understanding what Ashak really is. And we did a lecture on that, so I'm always recommending people to definitely check out all of the past lectures that we've done. Principle number two is resurrection. It's about becoming goddesses and gods once again by us learning to reopen our third eye. We did discussions on that, so definitely check that lecture out for those who have not seen it. And if you've seen it, I'm always telling you guys, as I say every week, watch it again. Principle number three is the wisdom of the Hutri and Ma'at. The Hutri stands for our divine mind, and Ma'at stands for order, right? And we did discussions on that. So, I'm always telling people to definitely check those particular lectures out. Principle number two is relationships. As an African people, we always live of, for, and by each other. And so we did a lecture on that. So definitely, guys, check those out for those who have not seen it. Principle number four is morphic resonance / matrix. Morphic resonance stands for sound, color, vibration, frequencies that produces matrices, which are the materials that manifest through nature. Okay. Principle number six is soul and spirit. Your soul is your emotional body, and your spirit is your life force. We did lectures on that, so definitely check that out. Principle number seven is Leviathan equals moon culture, aka religion, aka Western culture. For those who've not seen that particular lecture, we did a lecture on that, so definitely check that out. Principle number eight is health. Health, first key to health is positive mind. We always teach. And as melanated people, we need a lot of sunlight. Our body's 70% water, so you need water. Fasting, we recommend fasting at least once or twice a week. We recommend a herbal diet. That's something that Dr. Sabi had always talked about and taught. Exercise, that's the key to health. Learning rhythmic breathing is also key to health. Meditation, concentration, prayer, and chanting. All of those are a principle of health. As we always teach, health is not just physical, but it's also spiritual. Health is not just physical, but it's also spiritual. We live in a culture, in Western culture, they don't teach this. And we obviously, this is a key requisite to health. And we argue this is why so much of our people are having so many health problems, because they don't understand the balance between the two. Principle number 9 is acknowledging the creative force. We identify as Pa'ut, which just stands for the all, or all, actually. And creation is based on what we say the smack, based on the cycles of nature, right? We're always changing from what we teach is sun cycles to moon cycles to sun cycles. And existence itself is based on this energy of existence we call achak, or it translates to ether. It's the energy of existence itself. All things are made of the essence of achak. Okay. Now, as students of Wu-Sabat, we have 3 primary goals. We always try to teach and explain. Goal number 1 is to raise the self. Goal number 2 is to fight Leviathan. And goal number 3 is to work to build Sabbatia. Now, going back to goal number 1, in raising the self, what we teach is similar to what the Christians teach, is about being born again, giving up the old cultures of the Western culture and learning to live our new culture, which is Wu-Sabat, right? So that's the first and foremost key to one learning to develop or raise themselves. And in that process is changing your name. Okay, that's important. Correcting your name to a Sabaean name and make it known to all. Also, correct your dress, right? As African people, we have our own dress code. So it's important for us to begin to start identifying what our style of dress. Also, learn to speak our language, Sabaic, right? You must study our doctrine each and every day, which builds your sound right reasoning skill. This is one of the reasons why we're teaching what we're teaching, to help our people make better decisions, okay? Which is based on sound right reasoning. And then obviously you'll see your lives transform for the better. Then we also argue you must practice and master our daily rituals designed to turn yourself inside out. This is how you open your third eye, by doing the rituals consistently, daily, at least anywhere from 30 days to 90 days before you begin to see results. And nothing can be accomplished without the positive mind. So we always teach, always be positive. Number 2 in our goals is to fight Leviathan. This includes working to free Panabab Yananan, promoting Wu-Sabat, become a student teacher, and fight the 6 strongest weapons of Leviathan, which are ignorance, fear, ego, anger, our lust/desires, and lies/deceptions. This is all what Leviathan feeds offer. And then the goal number 3 is work to build Sabbatia. We work to support each other in business. We help each other reach positive goals. We help to build our culture. We must set up a landing zone for Panathato in Africa, which means we need land in Africa that would be supported by an African government. Guys, we have to get our own land to begin to build up our culture. And this is one of our most primary goals. And Ashuk is the key to accomplish all our goals. Now, what does it mean to be a Sabaean? A Sabaean is someone who is thoughtful and cares, someone who is helpful and honest, someone who is responsible and hardworking, someone who demands justice and honorable, someone who is righteous and humble, someone who is positive and cheerful, someone who is loving and peaceful, someone who is kind and considerate, someone who is neat, clean, and orderly. Now, our purpose as Sabaeans is liberation from adverse forces. This is our goal, to liberate ourselves from adverse forces. So, 1, you must take action each and every day to free yourself of 6 ether spirits inside and out, which includes Black people who are possessed by these spirit forces. Number 2, acknowledge and fight 6 ether from promoting capitalism, the gay agenda, miscegenation, the so-called equality of the races, and racism, white supremacy. These are the things we're trying to liberate ourselves from. And then number 3 is to learn, live by, and promote the laws/rules of natural nature. Now, word of advice to everyone: do not judge this doctrine by watching the behavior of Padabab Yanana nor his students. Judge this doctrine by the effectiveness of the information, aka information, that you personally put to practical use. This doctrine is based on self-authentication, guys. It's based on, because our doctrine is based on spiritual development. And if one doesn't focus on developing himself spiritually, then you're not going to get the benefits. Also, know that we are not preachers, but teachers who are dedicated to answering questions until there is a meeting of the minds between teacher and student, who then can work in unity, which is the only solution to our problems, guys. So that's key, right? Very key that we understand this. Okay. With all that being said, let's see. Before we get started, we always do our prayer system in our language, and we translate it into English. So for those who are not familiar with our language, Sabatia, Musba'u, you can read it or go over it or follow me in the English as I'm gonna, translate. Now, keep in mind, prayer is key, right? Prayer is key because what prayer does is it's designed to, how can I say, it's designed to help develop you spiritually, because this is what our ultimate objective is to develop ourselves spiritually. And so I cannot stress or talk about prayer enough. This is what's going to help transform us, doing the rituals. Prayer is a part of the ritual. So, and that's for those who don't know. For those who know, you know. But let's get started with the prayer. Bade kalal namasat wufad ko amad kasamun shalal pa'ut. Panen safa kawun pa sawa wu pa tara. Z kawuna nazula laha enkum. Manaz sabat wu masad. Amah Hade an Shafe Manah Salafu Wunataru Aju Laya Nafasu Kum Afuk Shane Kawun Kuma Pa Sawa Wu Pa Tara Anun Tawa Ankum Laha Panan Shafe Wu Alaj Anun Tawa Ankum Laha Nasui Nun Anun Tawa Ankum Laha Ashuk Ankum after Salafu Noon. Anun after Khara Ukum. Anun Talub Nasar Kuma. Anun Talub Nasar Kuma. And so Noon Sayim Nataru. And so Noon Salafu Noon. Anun after Musba'u. This book is the truth and the way. It was sent down for you all from Sabat, Wu-Sabat, star constellation, as a guidance and a healing from our ancestors and overseers. Return to your own. Accept what is yours, the truth and the way. We thank you all for this healing and cure. We thank you all for not forgetting us. We thank you all for Ashuk. You are our ancestors. We are your children. We seek your help. We seek your help. Help us, divine overseers. Help us, our ancestors. We are Musba'u. Anun, Atun, Atun, Amun. Jedna 4. Alrighty then. Okay. So today's discussion is, we're going to be talking about the secret government. This is something that the master teacher has been introducing, or has introduced to us as far back as 1970s or the 60s even. about the secret government. And he's written a series of books that were dedicated to the subject matter, which is the books we call Leviathan. In fact, the master teacher has written, I think, six editions of that series, the Leviathan series. So for those of you who have access to those books, that's what those books are focused on, is teaching about this concept. Leviathan is a terminology that comes out of the Bible for those who do not know. And it's actually really based on two words, right? The first word is Levi, which stands for law, and Athan, which stands for sin. So it translates to the law of sin or the laws of sin. Now, why is that significant? Because when you research the name sin is an ancient name for the Akkadian or Sumerian moon god. Okay, sin represents the moon. Now, there's two types of cultures on the planet: sun culture and moon culture. As African people, our original culture is sun culture, which is why we are identify as children of the sun. And then you have the opposite of sun culture, which is moon culture. And moon culture represents the children of the moon, which are the AKA the Caucasian race. Okay. And so when we say the spell of Leviathan, what we're really saying is that our people are living a culture which is moon culture, which is adverse to our nature. Because what does the moon represent? The moon stands for a dead solar body. There's no life on the moon. The moon doesn't have any vegetation, any plant life, any animal life. It's a dead solar body. And so it's a culture that represents the dead. And that's why white people call themselves the Caucasians, because as we always teach, caucus stands for a dead body, a caucus. And so they say caucus Asians. So they're the Asiatic children, or the Hindu children, or the albino Hindu children. And so, and they have deteriorating flesh, or their flesh is white. It lacks melanin. It lacks the nutrients, the life-giving energies to be able to live in the sun. So they're moon children, and their culture is based on moon culture, and it's the culture of death. So when we look at the European culture, all we see is death and destruction and mayhem. And this has been their history since they've been running around on the planet for at least 6,000 years. And so when we say our people are under the spell of Leviathan, what we're saying is that they're addicted to this moon culture. They're addicted to the culture of death. They literally are. And for the last 50 some odd years, the master teacher has been trying to re-educate us about getting away from this culture, this death-based culture that's destroying us. But unfortunately, so many of our people, they because of this hypnotic spell, they just can't comprehend it. They don't understand it. And so the master teacher wrote these series of books called Leviathan, which are dedicated to trying to educate our people about this moon culture, about this culture of death, in essence. I was trying to find to see if I had an image, have one of the books, but I don't have. I'm sorry, I don't have. I would have swore I had that particular book to show you guys the Leviathan series. And well, you know what? I'm sure it's online. I know it has to be online because that's a very popular book. Let me see if I can find it, because I think it's important for people to be familiar with this particular book. Okay, yeah. Okay, so this is an image, but this is a bad. Somebody's selling it on Amazon. Oh, why did I do that? Hold on. All I gotta do is this, and this will do it. Here you go. So this is the image of the book, the Leviathan series. And This actually, I have this particular copy. This came out in 1989, 1990. This is part of the third edition, and then you have these editions of it. Like I said, we probably put out about 6 editions of this particular subject matter, and this particular subject matter goes into explaining the secret government. Okay, which is what we're here to talk about. The secret government. So I highly recommend you guys from studying that. I think a lot of students in the master teacher really haven't put enough time into really understanding the effects of the secret government in our lives. You know, I think if we really understood the effects of the secret government in our lives, it'll help shape our decisions. Remember, our doctrine is about giving us the right knowledge, which will help shape the type of decisions that we're making, you know. And so I can't stress that enough. Now, in getting started with our discussion, first question we deal with is, what is the secret government? Answer: there is a hidden government that functions out of public view. The hidden government controls the visible government that operates within public view. This hidden government is worldwide in power and reach. This hidden government makes decisions on warfare, economics, social trends, media, entertainment, religion, science, basically all levels of domestic life. The secret government has influence. This secret government comes from secret societies that have existed for thousands of years on earth. And guys, I want to refer you to, if you look at Genesis chapter 6, that talks about the sons of God coming down to earth. In essence, ETs that are coming down to the planet Earth and taking the daughters of man and having children with the humanoid women. And this is the beginning of those, what we call the secret society bloodlines. Okay. So it goes back that far, or at least on this planet. These particular bloodlines, when you begin to research this subject matter of the secret government, being that these individuals who are ruling this planet, the AK secret government, they are descendants of this specific bloodline from these specific types of ETs. And we're going to get more into that. Also, you refer to Revelations chapter 12. Okay. It talks about these ETs coming down to earth. Let's see if we can bring that up. If I can find it, let's see. I think that's a very important King James version of the Bible. Let's see, Revelations 12. Now, if we go to Revelation chapter 12, verse 7, it says, there was a war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not. Neither were their place found anymore in heaven. Now, when the Bible talks about the heavens, as we always teach, it's talking about star constellations. Orion star constellation, Andromeda, the Pleiades star constellation, Lyra star constellation. Those are the heavens. Okay. And it says, and the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. So this being was cast on into the earth, deceiving human beings in the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. So again, the Bible confirms that these beings came down to the planet and have been causing mayhem and havoc ever since. And this gives you some insight about the scope of what we're dealing with when we're talking about the secret government. Okay. And in fact, I think the president, one of the first presidents to warn the American public about the secret government was John F. Kennedy. So for those who are not familiar with it, his what he said in regards to the secret government, listen to this.
Ladies and gentlemen, the very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. 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 No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. No president should fear public scrutiny of his program, for from that scrutiny comes understanding, and from that understanding comes support or opposition, and both are necessary. I am not asking your newspapers to support an administration, but I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people. For I have complete confidence in the response and dedication of our citizens whenever they are fully informed.
Okay, so that's Kennedy warning the public back in the 60s about the secret government. He wasn't the only president that did that. In fact, we're going to get into the other president, which is Dwight Eisenhower, also warned about the secret government. But it's weird because it's like, like I said, the master teacher has been trying to explain this for so long, but it for whatever reason, our people are having a hard time accepting it, and embracing it. But hopefully by the end of this discussion, people will be a lot more informed about the secret government and its mentality, its purpose, its agenda, and the fact that it's real. We got to get to the point and acknowledge that the secret government is real. It's not fake. It's a reality. Now, next question. Is there any other way to know that this secret government is real? Answer is yes. There is a person named Professor Michael Glennon who has written and lectured on this subject for many years. He argues that the U.S. government operates in two layers, one layer for the public and another layer that is private. The private layer of government makes the real policies the government functions on. Then there is another person named Edward Griffin, who was a reporter who wrote a book back in 1994 called The Creature from Jekyll Island. This book is about how the wealthiest and most powerful bankers from around the world wrote the Federal Reserve Act that created the 16th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Now keep in mind how unelected private citizens of the U.S. as well as foreign nationals are writing U.S. federal law. The question to ask is this possible? The answer is simple, which is the U.S. government is not ran by elected officials, but controlled by an elite few white men around the world. The journalists and so-called truth tellers by the name Alex Jones expose members of the secret government who each year at a remote resort in California called Bohemian Grove perform a ritual to their overlord called Moloch, aka the Owl God. That is also a symbol they put on a US dollar bill. Guys, now for those who don't know, you can look at the front of the US dollar bill, and they have that owl god that they worship, Moloch. They worship these beings, these spirit beings and ETs, guys. It's very real. So unfortunately, YouTube has been, in essence, sanitizing their videos. They've been erasing a lot of videos that have been putting this stuff out over the years. So it's actually been harder for people to research and look this stuff up. Okay, but here I want to show you guys another couple of videos. One is about this professor, what's his name, Michael Glennon, who's talking about the secret government, or what he calls it, the double government. But listen to this.
The dean at the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy at Tufts University here in Medford, Massachusetts. And I'm with one of our outstanding tenured faculty members and very good friend, Professor Michael Glennon, who is one of our leading professors of international law. Welcome, Michael.
Thanks for having me here, Jim.
Well, what I want to talk about today is Michael's new book, which has the extremely alluring title of National Security and Double Government. Now, I'm sure the first thing that occurs to anybody is, I don't even like the government we have. Why do I have to have a double government or a double helping of government? But this book is much more than that. It is a serious, sharp-eyed, and very clear set of observations about national security and how our government functions. So I've asked Michael to talk a little about that. And if I could, how did you get interested in this in a topic, Michael?
Well, Jim, I was a bit puzzled and troubled why national security policy remained almost unchanged from the Bush administration to the Obama administration. So many elements of that policy are virtually identical, from drone strikes, covert operations,
Guantanamo Bay,
Guantanamo, NSA surveillance.
It's a great point.
You go right down the list. It's an amazing continuity. And I thought it would be interesting to try to understand and explain that.
So I think that brings us really to the heart of it. What is double government?
Well, double government is a concept that was devised in the 1860s by one of the founders of The Economist magazine, Walter Bagehot.
Oh, sure.
He used it to describe the operation of the British government. And he suggested that the British government had split, in effect, into two sets of institutions. One of those sets of institutions was for public display, for show, the monarchy, the House of Lords, which people believed ran the government. But he said, in fact, the government in its day-to-day operations was run by a set of concealed institutions, the cabinet, the prime minister, and the House of Commons. And he...
Okay, so I don't want to go too much into it, but so he wrote a book on it explaining about the another layer of government. Okay. In fact, here's a report. This was a the news channel RT, who actually talked about this particular guy's book. I actually like their reporting on it because they actually give some good details. And I'll Eddie Morph, I'll get to your question as soon as we get through with our discussion. Okay. But listen to this, because they're talking about the guy's book.
The Kaiser Report. I'm Max Kaiser. You know, the system is rigged. Markets are rigged. The vote is rigged. Rigged, they say, but who are the riggers? Who gets to draw up the lists? The list not only of the deplorables, but the list of the tolerables, the acceptables. Who writes these lists? Does Stacey write the lists? Possibly. Let's ask her. Stacey, do you write these lists?
I have one name on my list.
Okay.
So yes, everybody in America is saying that the elections are rigged. Hillary Clinton says that Russia is going to rig the elections. Trump says Hillary is rigging the polls across states across the US. The Podesta emails show that Hillary, in fact, did say to banks and bankers in private that she believes the system is rigged. And gosh darn it, Bernie Sanders is capitalizing on that. And how do we stop him from saying this publicly when it should only be private amongst us political elite and you elite bankers who know that the system is rigged? So rigging is something that's really in the population's mind. And yet they still go out and vote. And I want to really provide some sort of historical context to this, because in the Podesta emails, one of the shocking things is that in 2008, when John Podesta was the transition team guy for Obama. So he helped pick who would be in the cabinet. It turns out that Citigroup actually selected Obama's transition team. So I want to go back to 2 years ago, because I have a memory and also access to Twitter. And somebody linked to this from Twitter.
I had a memory. Now I just have social media.
So in 2014, Michael J. Glennon, who is an insider, who was a legal counsel to the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations. He was also a counsel to the State Department and an advisor to various committees in Congress. So he's a very connected guy. And he wrote a book called National Security and Double Government. And he maintains, here's the headline from Boston Globe regarding his book, written in 2014, by the way, before everybody admonished Trump for saying the election is rigged. Vote all you want, the secret government won't change. So he notes that, voters chose Barack Obama in 2008. For hope and change. He ran on basically a civil liberties platform, that he would shut down all those bad, evil things that George Bush did, like spying on Americans and locking people up in Guantanamo Bay. And then he notes that everybody 6 years in, at the point of this Boston Globe interview, 6 years in, everybody was like, wait, it's completely the same thing as George Bush's administration. In fact, the drone war escalated. Guantanamo Bay was not shut down. The NSA spying became more aggressive. So he says, why did the face in the Oval Office change, but the policies remain the same? Critics tend to focus on Obama himself, a leader who perhaps has shifted with politics to take a harder line. But Tufts University political scientist Michael J. Glennon has a more pessimistic answer. Obama could not have changed policies even if he tried, because he says of the double government. There's a government that you choose. He says there's the one we elect, and then there's the one behind it.
Okay, so they're using the term double government instead of shadow government or new world order.
Yeah.
There's a term now called double government.
Yeah.
Okay, double government.
So he comes up with this term double government.
Okay, it's the double government. It's not the shadow government. It's not the cabal. It's not the Rothschilds. It's not new world order. It's not Alex Jones. It's the double government.
This is that there is one thing to say to the ignorant masses, the lumpen masses, and there's another thing to say in private to the likes of Lloyd Blankfein. And they quite clearly mock and laugh at the activists, at people who care about the vote, people who think their vote can have any sort of say in the outcome. And in fact, Michael J. Glennon, in this interview with the Boston Globe back in 2014, when he asked, well, is there anything to do to stop this double government? And he does bring up that knowledge
Look, Adam Smith and the age of enlightenment and the beginning of classical economics and the idea that you could create price discovery through the greed of all participants in something called the free market worked for a while. But now, to get to your point about rigging, the cost of market rigging and vote rigging has crashed. So it's never been easier for an individual or a small group, a cadre, to rig markets, rig votes, and rig the system.
So he's saying that rigged system requires knowledge and non-ignorance and non-asymmetric information. Information should not be asymmetric. Hillary Clinton clearly demonstrates in her conversations to the bankers that information is asymmetric, in that only they in private can discuss how rigged the system is. Do not tell the public. And what he says when asked how to change the system, he said the ultimate problem is the pervasive political ignorance on the part of the American people and indifference to the threat that is emerging from these concealed institutions. That is where the energy for reform has to come from, the American people, not from government. Government is very much the problem here. The people have to take the bull by the horns, and that's a very difficult thing to do because the ignorance is in many ways rational. There is very little profit to be had in learning about and being active about problems that you cannot affect, policies that you can't change. Again, I say that
So you see that, guys? they're talking about this double government or secret government that exists, and there's nothing you can do unless the people educate themselves. Obviously, that's what this discussion is about. That's why we're trying to inform our people. And like I said, the master teacher has been trying to teach this for 50 some odd years. And that's why we put out those Leviathan books. The first edition of the Leviathan book the master teacher put out was in 1971. 1971, guys. And we're still having a hard time with this subject matter. We're still totally ignorant about the nature of this government. Our people by the millions, every vote season, they're going out to vote for these people, and it doesn't matter. That's the point. It does not matter who you vote for because the policies are already set in stone how this government is going to operate. Has nothing to do with what the masses of people want. You know, and in fact, here I'm going to skip to another part in this discussion because they're going to go into an important part explaining how Barack Obama did not even get to choose the people in his cabinet. It was chosen for him by the bankers, and we're going to get into the bankers next in this discussion. So listen.
Reads, the most important WikiLeaks revelation isn't about Hillary Clinton. What John Podesta's emails from 2008 reveal about the way power works in the Democratic Party. But of course, as Michael J. Glennon pointed out, this is about all of the political parties in America. And what they show is that Michael Froman, who is now the U.S. Trade Representative, and he goes around negotiating TTIP and TPP and stuff. But at that point, he was an executive at Citigroup, one of the largest banks in America. And this was written in an email October 6, 2008, one full month before you went out to express your democratic rights to determine who the president, who the policies, what the future of your country would be, at least for the next 4 years. Well, October 6th, and about 2 months before Citigroup received the largest bailout in U.S. history. Well, Michael Froman at Citigroup sent an email to John Podesta, who was heading Obama's transition team into the White House, i.e. he would choose his cabinet. Well, Michael Froman, Citigroup, sent an email telling him who the cabinet should be. And remarkably, the cabinet list ended up being almost entirely on the money. It correctly identified Eric Holder for Justice, Janet Napolitano for Homeland Security, Robert Gates for Defense, Rahm Emanuel for Chief of Staff, Peter Orszag for the Office of Management and Budget, Arnie Duncan for Education, Eric Shinesky for Veterans Affairs, Kathleen Sebelius for Health and Human Services, Melody Barnes for the Domestic Policy Council, and more. For the Treasury, 3 possibilities were on the list: Robert Rubin, Larry Summers, and Timothy Geithner.
So Citibank picked the cabinet.
Citigroup picked the cabinet. It appears it would appear. Yeah. Perhaps they were on the same page.
Okay, so bankers, in essence, picked Barack Obama's cabinet. How does that make any sense? This is what I was saying before. You have corporations, private citizens choosing who should be running the government. That's just another example of it. And here, there's now we're going to get into the banks, right? The Federal Reserve, where is this at? If I can find it, I thought I had it right here. And this is talking about the Federal Reserve and the fact that the Federal Reserve Bank, for those who do not know, it's a private corporation, guys. The Federal Reserve Bank, for those who do not know, is a private corporation, is not a part of the federal government. It's very important to understand that. Now, there's a guy who wrote the book called Creature from Jekyll Island. He's explaining this particular subject matter, his book, why he wrote it, why it's important. So listen up.
First written in 1994, but it is currently in its 32nd printing. This is the 5th edition, and the author is G. Edward Griffin, and he's joining us here on Book TV on C-SPAN 2 in Las Vegas. Mr. Griffin, who is the creature from Jekyll Island? Or what is the creature?
What is the creature, yeah. I had fun with that title because I thought if anybody saw it in the bookstore, they might think it was a sequel to the Jurassic Park or something like that. The creature from Jekyll Island is the Federal Reserve System. And the reason for the Jekyll Island connection, one of the most interesting things about the Federal Reserve is that it was created on Jekyll Island. It's a real island. It's off the coast of Georgia. And it was on that island back in 1910 that a small group of men gathered, and it was their mission to draft what became eventually the Federal Reserve Act. And I see you're going to show the pictures there. Yeah, those are the guys. And the funny thing about that piece of history is that the Federal Reserve bill was being sold to the American people at that time as a piece of legislation that was going to somehow control those big bad bankers. See? And what they didn't realize is that the big bad bankers that you're looking at right there, those are the epitome of the great power centers of banking. They were the ones that were busy writing the bill that was supposed to control.
Who are these 6 gentlemen, Mr. Griffin?
Well, they're representatives.
You could walk us through them.
Primarily, Senator Aldrich is the only one that wasn't a banker. He was the politician. He was the one that was sort of spearheading the political side of it.
But father-in-law also to John Rockefeller.
John Rockefeller, yeah. He was tied in very closely to the banking fraternity and the industrial complex. A very wealthy guy in his own right. Probably the most important political figure in the United States, short of the president, who was Woodrow Wilson in those days. But the rest of these guys are all bankers, and they represented the dynasties of J.P. Morgan and William and the Rockefeller dynasty. And they had connections to Kuhn Loeb and Company that were there, and that means they were connected to the Rothschilds in England and France. And Max Warburg was there. Paul Warburg was there, and he had connection to his brother Max, who was the head of the banking, the Warburg Banking Consortium in Germany and the Netherlands. And so what we have is this was an international group here, really, representing international finance. And if there was anything that was the epitome of the big bad bankers of the world, these were the guys. So what happened there is that they knew that there was going to be some kind of a move to control banking. They knew that Congress was going to pass some kind of a law to regulate banking. And so instead of being stupid about it and just sitting back and saying, oh, I hope they don't do too bad, they decided to take the lead. They said, we'll write the bill. We'll make sure that it's to our liking. And so that's what it's all about. They went to Jekyll Island where nobody knew they were going, where they had a meeting that was in a great deal of secrecy. They denied that they went for many years thereafter, but they actually drafted the Federal Reserve Act on Jekyll Island in 1910. And then the next 3 years, it took that much time to promote it and get it through Congress.
So 1910, William.
Okay, so again, these are private men writing the laws in this country. Writing the laws. They wrote the Federal Reserve Act, and we're going to get into that a little bit. But this is the reality, right? This is the essence of the secret government. Okay, so let's go on. Question: what is the significance of the creation of the Federal Reserve Act for the secret government? Right. So that's the question. Answer: he or she who controls a people's money supply will be able to control people's labor and lives. People must understand that central banks like the Federal Reserve are controlled by private individuals who have the power to create money out of nothing, but the people who use this money must either labor for it or exchange natural resources that has real world value for paper called money that has zero intrinsic value. The public do not understand that by giving private men the power to create money makes the people who work for this money slaves to this money, which is proven by how people react to money. They kill for it, steal for it, lie for it, cheat for it, sell their bodies for it, sell people for it, called slavery. The desire for money has made people commit crimes that are unthinkable. These private white men use this money as a tool to control people, at the same time use this money to create power for themselves to the point where they now do not need money any longer, since they control governments and the most powerful global corporations of the world. Okay, so you guys have an idea of the scope. I'm trying to give you an idea of the scope and power that these guys have, this so-called secret government, these so-called private individuals who are controlling the public's government, guys. Okay, so here's another discussion on talking about the scope and power of the secret government. Listen to this.
Who's that? Zbig Brzezinski. Zbigniew Brzezinski was counselor for strategic and international studies, professor of American foreign policy at Johns Hopkins, national security advisor to President Jimmy Carter, trustee and founder of the Trilateral Commission, member of the Council on Foreign Relations, international advisor to several major corporations, associate of Henry Kissinger, also worked for Ronald Reagan in intelligence capacities. Co-chairman of the Bush National Security Advisory Task Force in 1988. What a guy. Zbig. Now,
real quick, this guy he's talking about, Zbig Brzezinski, however you pronounce his name, he's responsible for Barack Obama. Guys, for those who do not know, he's responsible for getting Barack Obama or selected to get elected. All right, this guy was a part of the secret government. Okay, he was a bureaucrat, as they call them, and he wrote a book that this guy is going to explain. He's explaining in this particular book how the secret government controls the world, how they should dominate the planet. Okay, and it's very important because it ties into what China is doing right now. In fact, China is doing what he explained in this particular book, because he talked about, this book came out in the 90s, and it was about the race to control the planet, whether it be the Europeans or the Asians. It was basically who was going to control the planet in the next turn of the century. Okay, whether it be again these white men, or is it going to be the China come to power? Okay, so listen up.
if you want to get really, 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 really angry, go buy this book. It's called The Grand Chessboard: American Primacy and Its Geostrategic Objectives, written by Zbigniew Brzezinski in 1997. I'm going to read you some quotes from that book. Page XII, it's the very first words in the book. The last decades of the 20th century has witnessed a tectonic shift in world affairs. For the first time ever, a non-Eurasian power has emerged not only as a key arbiter of Eurasian power relations, but also as the world's paramount power. The defeat and collapse of the Soviet Union was the final step in the rapid ascendance of a Western Hemisphere power, the United States as the sole and indeed the first truly global superpower. Page XII, it's in the preface. But in the meantime, He says, it is imperative that no Eurasian challenger, Eurasia is everything in between roughly east of Germany all the way to the Pacific Ocean, south through the Indian subcontinent, includes the Middle East. It's imperative that no Eurasian challenger, by that he means Russia or China, emerges capable of dominating Eurasia and thus of also challenging America. The formulation of a comprehensive and integrated Eurasian geostrategy is therefore the purpose of this book, Geostrategy, Eurasia. The attitude of the American public toward the external projection of American power has been much more ambivalent. The public supported America's engagement in World War II largely because of the shock effect of the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. It gets worse. For America, the chief geopolitical prize is Eurasia. Now a non-Eurasian power, that's us, is preeminent in Eurasia, and America's global primacy, isn't that arrogant? America's global primacy is directly dependent on how long and how effectively its preponderance on the Eurasian continent is sustained. What he's saying is that if the U.S. wants to stay top dog, we have to control Eurasia. America's withdrawal from the world, or because of the sudden emergence of a successful rival, would produce massive international stability. It would prompt global anarchy. You know what he's saying there? Yeah, a little global anarchy would probably be a damn good thing right now. What he's saying there is, if we don't control the world by whatever means necessary, the world's going to be miserable. He didn't ask my opinion. Did he ask yours? Okay. In that context, how America manages Eurasia, do we manage people around the world? Is that our job? Is critical. Eurasia is the globe's largest continent and is geopolitically axial. A power that dominates Eurasia would control two of the world's three most advanced and economically productive regions. A mere glance at the map also suggests that control over Eurasia would almost automatically entail Africa's subordination.
You hear that? So he's saying they're talking about how they're going to control the world, conquer the planet, basically white nations, and they're using America represents the military might for the secret government. Again, America represents the military might for the secret government, and they're saying whoever can control Eurasia, which is the Asiatic nations, will automatically control Africa. And that's why the battle now between the United States and China, and you guys see anyone who researches what's going on with China, all they're doing is influencing Africa. They're all over Africa. And they're getting African nations to support them, the Chinese that is, they're getting African nations to support them on political agendas. For instance, basically all of the African nations, they're saying do not acknowledge Taiwan Taiwan, because China feels that Taiwan should be a part of China and not its own separate nation. And there's a struggle now going on between the United States and China over Taiwan. Should Taiwan be independent? As if these people don't have the right to choose their own independence. But the Chinese want to make Taiwan a part of China, not giving them the right to choose how they want to run their government. And all the African nations are going along with the Chinese because they're indebted to the Chinese. Because we're not players in the world. We don't have no real world power. We don't have any world respect because we're not paying attention to how things are running on this planet. That's why we have to become knowledgeable about the nature and of this thing we call in secret government, guys. We can't stress this enough. We can't stress this enough. So let me go on to, let's see. Where are we at? Where are we at here? Okay, so question. What is MJ12? What is MJ12? MJ12 stands for majestic, aka 12, or 12 mighty ones. Excuse me, which is a biblical term related to angels. This was a group of 12 white men made up of politicians, scientists, military, and businessmen whose purpose was to be the human contacts for ETs who visit Earth. This is a secret group of people who are actors of the secret government whose job was to deal with ET contact for Earth. People must realize the scope, knowledge, and power of the secret government. It is now becoming public knowledge since 2017 New York Times article that exposed the government's secret program to study the UFO phenomenon. If people were to look at the work of Dr. Stephen Greer Disclosure Project, where he had in 2001 over 500 military witnesses who claimed to be involved in the secret government cover-up of the UFO phenomenon. The point being made is that the evidence of the secret government is overwhelming for anyone who chooses to study the subject matter. The problem with this issue is that people have acquired great influence, power, and control over the mass majority of the human family and use their knowledge to influence the population to make irrational decisions that damage our lives. Okay, so now I would say refers to Eisenhower. President Eisenhower warned about this secret government. He called it the military-industrial complex, right? So here, where are we at? Eisenhower is talking about it. Listen.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
Every gun that is made, every warship launched, every rocket fired signifies, in the final sense, a theft from those who hunger and are not fed, those who are cold and are not clothed. This world in arms is not spending money alone. It is spending the sweat of its laborers, the genius of its scientists, the hopes of its children. The cost of one modern heavy bomber is this: a modern brick school in more than 30 cities. It is 2 electric power plants, each serving a town of 60,000 population. It is 2 fine, fully equipped hospitals. It is some 50 miles of concrete. We pay for a single fighter plane with 500,000 bushels of wheat. We pay for a single destroyer with new homes that could have housed more than 8,000 people.
We cannot keep giving more money to the Pentagon than it needs when millions of children in our country are food insecure, when 140 million Americans cannot afford the basic necessities of life without going into debt.
Now look at that. This was advertising paid for Bernie Sanders running for his elected office. But what's ironic about it is he's trying to show how this country operates. They're spending more on military spending than trying to deal with domestic issues of the people, the needs of the people. They don't care about the needs of the people. They're about making weapons, making money off of those weapons, and controlling the public, So, the master teacher, he wrote about this group called the MJ-12 in this book right here, The Mission Earth. And he gave a list of the different members of this particular MJ-12. This is on page 77, where he talks about it in this particular book. He says, Operation Majestic 12, prepare for Eisenhower. By the use of the word majestic, it is known that the word majestic is the same as the word al-Jabbar, which is known in Arabic as Jabarian, also Gibor in Hebrews Genesis chapter 6, given Dwight D. Eisenhower on November the 18th, 1952, referred to as the MJ-12 Project or Majestic 12, was set up by President Truman on September the 24th, 1947. And these were the 12 Majestics. So he has a list of the individuals that they selected as a part of this particular group that dealt with extra ETs. That was the goal of this particular secret group. Here's another discussion about the MJ-12. Listen to this.
Mexico. Ancient astronaut theorist Giorgio Tsoukalos is at the home of Linda Moulton Howe. After examining all of the material related to the Majestic 12, she believes that the most compelling documents are those that surfaced in Maryland in 1994.
This, to me, this is the best document that's been leaked. It's called Restricted Psalm 101, Majestic 12 Group. And all of us, when we first saw that title, Extraterrestrial Entities in Technology, Recovery and Disposal, one of the first things that everybody wanted to do was find out, okay, did they use this stamp in 1954 from the War Office? Turns out that they did, all the way up into the 60s. And one of the more important pieces, I think, is as you go through here, they found in a government printing office, take a look at this. This is from a blow-up where they were doing a test. And look at this unauthorized, and look at what happens to that Z. It raises slightly.
Right.
So Bob went to the government printing office and found a guy named McCarter who was printing in the GPO in Washington, D.C. in 1954. And he took one look at this text and he said, this was done on a monotype. I used it, and the Z would collect dust, and that's why the Z's would print rays.
So different steps have been taken to authenticate this document.
Yes.
The fellow who I spoke to, he fortunately had been a long time employee of the public printer and had actually worked on the kind of presses that he thought were appropriate for this document. He said, based on the printing, I'd say it clearly was printed on one of the presses in this building or in this basement of the...
Now, let me just stop here. They're trying to show the proof that these documents, these government documents about the MJ-12 is authentic, because when you research it, they try to say those documents are not real government documents. And they're trying to say it is real government documents, and they can prove it because the typewriters that they were using, these were government typewriters. And so you can identify when letters that were written by these particular typewriters at that time. Okay, and so because there's a lot of controversy over whether or not MJ-12 really existed, again, because it's a part of the secret government, and they don't want to tell the general public that there's branches or there's fractions operating within the government that are doing things that the public doesn't know, like dealing with UFOs, because you're talking about this is the 1950s. The public had no idea that this government was dealing with ETs. They keep all this stuff secret. That's why it's called secret government. But listen on.
Pentagon in 1954, which is what it says.
And then when you start getting into what is in this book, you have the illustrations and sketches of 4 different categories of different craft, UFOs. And on this page, here are the discs. Here is a long cigar shape, which is described in this document as being up to 1,000 feet in diameter. And then this one, the ice cream cone, and this, the triangle. And there is a paragraph in here that implies that we are dealing with collaboration, that there must be some agreement between the United States and the extraterrestrials.
Really?
There is on this page 17, it's under chapter 5, and it goes into encounters initiated by the extraterrestrial biological entities. Possible contact may take place as a result of overtures by the entities themselves. In these instances, it is anticipated that encounters will take place at military installations or other obscure locations selected by mutual agreement. This is
mutual?
1954.
According to the Majestic 12 documents, the men who made up this group and were in communication with beings from other worlds included top scientists, government officials, and high-ranking military personnel.
Okay, so again, that's just trying to give people some insight about, operations of the secret government. And as we can see, this group called the MJ12 is, this is the reality. This is what we're dealing with. The United States government, they're being used. You have layers to the government. As they said, it's a double government. You have one layer that shows its face to the public, and then there's a hidden layer that is operating in the background, doing what it does, its own private agenda for the elite people who control this planet, guys. So next question: how does the media play into the power of the secret government? Answer: all levels of media are controlled by the secret government, whether it be news, social media, or all levels of entertainment. As Black people, we can clearly see how the media promote the greatness of whiteness and the degradation of Blackness. White is good or God, and Black is bad or the devil. These images of white versus Black in the media are not by chance, but by calculated thought. If we research the so-called father of public relations, Edward Bernays, this is his picture right here and above. He wrote a book called Propaganda. Guys, he's the guy who came up with the concept propaganda back in the early 1900s. Let's keep going. It says, Edward Bernays, who focused on how to influence the behavior of the masses of the population. Edward Bernays was an individual who was employed by the global elite on how to use media to control the public thinking in the early 1900s. Edward Bernays should be credited with teaching media how to get Black people to behave in ways that is against their own self-interest, such as Black women wearing blonde hair or Black people becoming rich, forgetting about using their wealth to help their race, or how when Black people become educated in white people's schools, they lose identity with their African heritage. Guys, he created this slogan. Everybody familiar with this slogan? I want you, U.S. Army, Uncle Sam. He came up with that slogan, right? And we know, as the master teacher has taught us, this Sam is a code name for the devil, Samael. Samael is the name of the devil. We're going to get into that. He goes on to say, we now see in the media how they are trying to convince the upcoming generations that it is okay to be gay, that mixed race couples are okay, or how it's better to eat fast food rather than cook something that is healthier at home. If you don't control what goes into yours or your children's mind, someone else will. Anyone who researched Edward Bernays, he makes it very clear that he is an agent of the secret government, not to mention that he is one of the persons responsible for the Uncle Sam campaign, which is a symbol or one of the names of the devil, aka Samael. This campaign was about convincing men to fight, kill, and die in wars that benefit the global elite at the expense of the sweat, blood, and tears of young, able-bodied men. Okay, so here's some information on Edward Bernays, right? Now check this out. We're gonna go to a clip. This here talks about what this is somebody reading from his book called Propaganda, and this is what he put in his book. Listen to this.
Intelligent manipulation of the organized The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country.
You hear that? The invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. So he's talking about the secret government. Now, mind you guys, this is like 1910, 1920s when this book came out. So y'all need to be aware of the timeline that we're dealing with. The secret government is not new. That's what I was trying to say. It's ancient. Okay, let's keep going.
We are governed, our minds are molded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggested, largely by men we have never heard of. In almost every act of our daily lives, whether in the sphere of politics or business, in our social conduct or our ethical thinking, we are dominated by the relatively small number of persons who understand the mental processes and social patterns of the masses. It is they who pull the wires which control the public mind, who harness old social forces and contrive new ways to bind and guide the world. This passage was written by Edward Bernays, the nephew of Sigmund Freud and a pioneering mind behind advertising, modern propaganda, and the field of public relations. Bernays' influence was enormous. Relying heavily on the insights of his uncle, he developed highly successful manipulation techniques which are still used today, not only by companies to sell consumer products, but also by the powers that be to, in the words of Bernays, control and regiment the masses. In this video, we'll explore some of Bernays' most intriguing ideas, paying particular attention to his insights on how group psychology can be used to control and manipulate the masses. In his classic work, Group Psychology and the Analysis of the Ego, Sigmund Freud described group psychology as being concerned with the individual man as a member of a race, of a nation, of a caste, of a profession, of an institution, or as a component part of a crowd of people who have been organized into a group at some particular time for some definite purpose. In other words, group psychology attempts to understand how an individual's behavior, thoughts, and emotions change when becoming a part of a group. The tendency of human beings to form groups was selected for in our evolutionary past due to the survival benefits it offered. Ancient humans who organized into tribes were more likely to survive and reproduce in the harsh environments in which they lived. However, with the help of modern technologies, humans today have transformed the environment in a manner which renders the survival value of tribal organization obsolete. But with that said, the ancient and instinctual pull of tribal organization still looms large in the lives of most, with many people today identifying and hence stereotyping both themselves and others based on things such as race, class, gender, nationality, religion, or the political party or ideology to which one adheres. This continued proclivity to engage in group identification is, according to Bernays, a function of the enlarged sense of self-importance that individuals derive from identifying with a potentially powerful mass. Just as the wolf pack is many times as strong as the combined strength of its individual members, so too the individual senses the potential power of the group, and it derives feelings of potency in identifying with it. Beginning in the late 19th century, a number of thinkers, most notably Freud and Gustave Le Bon, attempted to understand why people engage in group identification and how group identification affects one's mind and behavior. As Bernays noted, the insights that emerged from this study caught the attention of those in positions of power who wanted to expand their control of societies. These people saw the potential of taking the theoretical insights of group psychology and transforming them into practical methods that could be used to manipulate the masses from outside of the public's eye, a task which formed the basis of Bernays' work in public relations. As Bernays explained in his book, Propaganda, the systematic study of mass psychology revealed the potentialities of invisible government of society by manipulation of the motives which actuate man in the group. These studies established that the group has mental characteristics distinct from those of the individual, and is motivated by impulses and emotions which cannot be explained on the basis of what we know of individual psychology. So the question naturally arose: If we understand the mechanism and motives of the group mind, is it not possible to control and regiment the masses according to our will without their knowing it? The great potential of using insights from group psychology to control the masses is partly a function of the fact that an individual can be influenced by a group or crowd even when physically isolated. As Bernays pointed out in his book, Crystallizing Public Opinion, a crowd does not mean merely a physical aggregation of a number of persons. The crowd is rather a state of mind. So long as one engages in group identification, their mind and behavior will be changed by the enduring influence of group psychology, even with no other members of the group physically present. To understand how the tendency of human beings to engage in group identification renders the masses manipulable, we must turn to one of Freud's ideas, which heavily influenced the manipulation techniques developed by Bernays. In his book Propaganda, published in 1928, Bernays explained, "It is chiefly the psychologists of the school of Freud who have pointed out that many of man's thoughts and actions are compensatory substitutes for desires which he has been obliged to suppress. A thing may be desired not for its intrinsic worth or usefulness, but because he has unconsciously come to see in it a symbol of something else, the desire for which he is ashamed to admit to himself. A man buying a car may think he wants it for purposes of locomotion. He may really want it because it is a symbol of social position, an evidence of his success in business, or a means of pleasing his wife."
Guys, this is why our people live in projects or tenement buildings, but they got Mercedes-Benz parked in the front of their apartment. They have Escalade, Cadillac Escalades. They have all these expensive cars, but live in apartments. They don't realize that we have been programmed. This is what the master teacher has been explaining. We are literally under a psychological program, and they know how we think. They've been studying us for the last 400 years we've been in this country. This is why it's so hard to deal with our people, because we're under this psycho programming of our. We have this desire. That's why there is a study done on Black people, and it said that close to 50% of Black people in this country have a desire to be white, and it's unconscious. And that's why it's hard to get people in Black conscious organizations. Why the masses of our people cater to European culture, don't want to identify with don't want to identify with African culture. You can look at that on a continent where our people are going out their way to identify with the Europeans and not with themselves, their African heritage, because they think that the European culture represents progress, represents success, represents intelligence, and anything African or Black represents ignorance. This is a programming. This is a psychological programming that has been done on us. You know, and so this is what we're at war with, guys. It's mad. It's insane, but the level of brainwashing that we're dealing with, it's incredible. But I mean, this is where we at, you know. And so I was talked about, you know, the Uncle Sam campaign. That was just to let you know what they represent. Remember, I told you about Revelations that it said that Satan fell to the earth. He came, him and his angels. These are ETs that represent that negative energy. That's what you're dealing with. You're dealing with beings who took over this planet, guys. I can't stress that enough. The master teacher has been trying to explain this. Question: how does secret government influence and control foreign nations? Right? How does the secret government influence and control foreign nations? I forgot to put that word there. How does the secret government influence and control foreign nations? Okay, answer. Africa was colonized by white people up until the 1960s, where African nations began to take control of their nations, but Africa, until this very day, are still subservient to foreign nations, right? Which is what we see going on with China, how China is influencing Africa. He says, if we listen to the experience of John Perkins, who claimed to have worked for the secret government, explains how he was trained to control foreign nations so that U.S. corporations would have access to their natural resources. So this guy wrote a book. He called himself the economic hitman, for those who are familiar with this particular individual, right? Let's see, where is he at? I should have him. Now listen to this guy.
Thank you. I stood in front of the Shah of Iran, the presidents of Indonesia, Ecuador, Panama, members of the Royal House of Saudi Arabia, and I've said something like, in this hand, I have millions of dollars for you and your friends if you play our game. In this hand, I have a gun in case you decide not to. Now, my words were more diplomatic than that, but that was the message. I was an economic hitman. And we economic hitmen have created a new global economy, really, a form of capitalism that I call predatory capitalism. It isn't working. We all know this. The oceans are rising. The glaciers are melting. Less than 5% of us live here in the United States, and we consume almost 30% of the world's resources, while half the world is on the verge of starvation, or actually starving. That's not a model. China can't do it. India can't do it. They're trying, but they can't do it. We have to change. We have to have a revolution. We must change the system. I'll get into that in a minute, but first, how did I become an economic hitman? While I was still in business school, I was in.
Okay, so just real quick, you see what he did. Basically, he went to foreign leaders and threatened them. He basically to sell out their nation so that they can get wealthy. Everybody knows about African leaders doing that. They sell out their people so that they can get wealthy. He talks about how there were some people who tried to resist, and what did they do? They killed them, like Patrice Lumumba. You know, if you don't play ball with the secret government, they eliminate you. That's just the name of the game. They eliminate you. Let's see. I'm a guy by the name of Bill Moyers. He goes into listen to this. We got another part. This guy right here, this picture, this is Major General Smedley Butler. He was a major general in the early 1900s, guys. Says, if we listen to Major General Smedley Butler of the early 1900s explain how war is a racket used by U.S. corporations to invade foreign nations for the sole purpose to gain access to foreign nations' natural resources. Do not forget, last week we talked about the doctrine of discovery, and this behavior the general speaks of is just an extension of that. The key point is that powerful white men who have corporations use their power of government for their own personal gain, which is obvious violation of national law. This just goes to show you how the secret government operates and control government regardless of the interests of U.S. citizens, right? So these guys, they just go into foreign nations and they take over. Remember, we talked about last week how the Catholic Church has set that will in motion. Now we know this goes back to ancient Greece that they was doing this. There's nothing new about how these demons operate, right? But now, so you have the reporter Bill Moyers. He did a whole special on the secret government. Listen to this. This was like I think in the 1980s he did this, or maybe early 90s. He did this special, and it's titled "The Secret Government."
The secret government is an interlocking network of official functionaries, spies, mercenaries, ex-generals, profiteers, and super patriots who, for a variety of motives, operate outside the legitimate institutions of government. Presidents have turned to them when they can't win the support of the Congress or the people, creating that unsupervised power so feared by the framers of our Constitution. Just imagine that William Casey's dream came true. Suppose the enterprise grew into a super-secret, self-financing, self-perpetuating organization. Suppose they decided on their own to assassinate Gorbachev or the leader of white South Africa. Could a president control them? And what if he became the enterprise's public enemy number one? Who would know? Who would say no?
The secret government will continue in a few moments.
The history of our secret government. World War II was over. Europe lay devastated. The United States emerged as the most powerful nation on earth. But from the rubble rose a strange new world, a peace that was not peace, and a war that was not war. We saw it emerging when the Soviets occupied Eastern Europe. The Cold War had begun.
An iron curtain has descended across the continent. Behind that line lie all the capitals of the ancient states of Central and Eastern Europe.
The Russians had been our ally against the Nazis, an expedient alliance for the sake of war. Now they were our enemy. To fight them, we turned to some of the very men who had inflicted on humanity the horrors of Hitler's madness. We hired Nazis as American spies. We struck a secret bargain with the devil.
One that I know real well is Klaus Barbie. He was wanted by the French as their #1 war criminal. And somehow we employed a man like that as a very secretive informant.
Erhard Fabringhaus was employed in the U.S. Army Counterintelligence Corps and assigned to work with Nazi informants spying on the Russians. One of them was Klaus Barbie, the Butcher of Lyon, who had tortured and murdered thousands of Jews and resistance fighters. The Americans did not turn Barbie over to the French when they finished with him. They helped him escape to Bolivia. Other top Nazis were smuggled into the United States to cooperate in the war against the new enemy. So began the morality of the Cold.
Now, guys, let me make this clear. So the secret government, so you're dealing with the Nazis, right? Guys, as the master has taught us, the Nazis did not lose the war. The Germans did. The Nazis did not lose World War II, but the Germans did, guys. And this has nothing to do with Project Paperclip. For those who might be thinking that they're talking about Project Paperclip, they're not even talking about Project Paperclip. Remember, Project Paperclip was about getting Nazi scientists who they were in, and we're gonna get into that next. They're the ones who set up the secret space program. The Nazi scientists. They helped with that along with ETs. ETs help this government dealing with, they have a secret space program, guys. The secret government. This is talking about the secret spy network. They pulled in Nazi spies for something totally different. Okay, apart from the Nazi scientists. So our people are totally oblivious to what's really going on and how this world is really being operated behind the scenes, as they say, in the shadows. Okay. So let's keep going. Question. The secret government and the secret space program. So what is that about? Answer. The master teacher, Dr. York, has been teaching us about the secret government, secret space program since the 1980s, if not sooner. We have learned that the secret government has spacecrafts that can take them to the moon, Mars, Jupiter, and many other planets. The point is that the secret government has reached such a level in technology that most would find it hard to accept without witnessing these things themselves. If people would truly study this topic, most will find that these things are very real and sadly true. The secret government is said to have very advanced technology compared to what people on Earth think is possible. They have time travel technology. They have spacecrafts. They have knowledge of the higher dimensions and know how to contact beings who exist there. They have advanced weapons designed to fight ETs. They have the ability to monitor ET crafts and that come to Earth, much like what is shown in the movie Men in Black. A lot of things that are shown in movies or TV are about ETs are very real, such as the Predator or the beings called the Greys. People must come to grips with the reality that they live on a planet called Earth that is traveling through space like any other normal spacecraft. Earth is just one of billions, if not trillions, of Earth-like planets that exist. Now, guys, here's a quote from a scientific article, right? Here's a scientific article. You can look this up. It says this. It says the first exoplanets, worlds orbiting stars besides our own, were discovered in the 1990s. In the grand scheme of, well, everything, that's very recent. It's very impressive how much scientists have been able to uncover about these distant worlds in such a short time. With the help of ground and space-based telescopes, researchers have found about 4,000 confirmed exoplanets and thousands of other candidates. A relatively small number of these worlds bear similarities to Earth. Scientists estimate that there may be as many as 6 billion Earth-like planets in the Milky Way galaxy alone. End quote. Y'all hear that, guys? So that's just to say, guys, to think that we are only alone in this universe is insane. They now know there's Earth-like planets throughout the multiverse. They know this, guys. They know this, but let's keep going. It says, so I say with all the reports of UFOs since the 1940s, and now the Department of Defense in 2017 admit UFOs are real. With all the people who claim to have seen ETs and spoke with them, these claims of a secret space program does not seem so far-fetched when you add up all the data on this topic, looking at it from clear eyes. So refer to here was a guy who was a part of the secret government by the name of we have a couple of people that was all we're going to get into individuals that claim to be a part of the secret government. Now listen to this. For the last 6,000. This I did this in the lecture I did on the African Science of Existence, Part 4, The Many-Faced God. If you haven't watched that lecture, definitely check that out. It's really cool. But I talked about it, and so I pulled this clips on the secret government. Listen up.
Years.
People all over this planet for at least 6,000 years have been influenced by extraterrestrials, the Dracos and the reptilians. They have taken the information that is in essentially every school on the planet, and they've modified the information. All history documentation in this country and on every country on the planet have been given lies about astronomy, lies about mathematics, lies about technical capabilities, lies about the universe, you name it, okay? Everything has been lies. Every PhD on this planet, whether they're scientific, whether they're medical, makes no difference. Every book that they read the 6 years they were in the university are lies. They're not telling the truth. They were not taught the truth. At that time, we had 34 admirals in the Navy. All of them had been through Annapolis. They learned how to learn everything about the Navy, everything about history, everything about mathematics, everything about astronomy, you name it. They learned all lies. So who did the Secretary of Navy Forrestal select
for this job. Turns out Admiral Wu-Sabat was not an American. He was born in Australia. The Secretary of the Navy selected an Australian man who had not been infected with the lies that the reptilians had taught us. He was free of that. So the Secretary of the Navy was aware of this because he had been contacted by Nordic extraterrestrials, people here trying to help the United States. Okay? Very important point.
You heard that point? So he said United States was getting help from Nordic ETs. From Nordic ETs have been helping, in essence, the secret government is really what he's talking about, because the general public don't know anything about what's really happening. Okay? And so these Nordics, the master teacher had told us that the Nordics are at war with the reptilians, and the reptilians they actually eat the Nordics. They eat them. That's one of the reasons why the Caucasian race was created 6,000 years ago as a food supply, as a replacement on the menu. It's a sad reality. That's why I tell people all the time, watch the movie Jupiter Ascending. Watch the movie Jupiter Ascending for those who have not seen it. That movie kind of goes into how ETs are dealing with the planet Earth, that they see Earth as a farm. The master teacher has been trying to explain that. We put that out in a book called The Proof, where he opens up in the book, talk about the farm called Earth. But let's keep listening.
So when I was selected, I hadn't been to the universities. I hadn't gotten the bad information. I hadn't been given the wrong information, and this is the reason I was selected, because I was knowledgeable of the Navy, I was knowledgeable what the threats were, but I hadn't gone to the university and picked up all the lies. Very important.
Corey, how do you feel about that? That's a pretty bold cowboy statement that Tompkins just made here.
It was common knowledge in the programs. They would talk quite often about how the physics model.
Now, this is Corey Good, who claimed to be a part of the secret government, guys, for those who do not know. His name is Corey Good. He said that basically what happens is that the secret government, they abduct children and they bring them into this program, and it's dealing with space travel, it's dealing with time travel, it's dealing with all kinds of stuff. So anyone who researched Corey Good, he explains his experience with the secret government and how they have a secret space program, and that he was a part of the secret space program. Okay, so he's giving his critique on the guy who just we just listened to, William Tompkins, who said he was also part of the secret government back in the 40s, and he was a part of the secret space program in developing it. He talked about helping developing the Apollo mission, going to the moon. He basically said he had something to do with some of the secret space program that this government has set up back in the 40s and 50s.
That we're using down here on the planet are incorrect, and they have not been corrected on purpose. They use different hyperdimensional mathematics models than what are used down here. The physics models, we're still on this quantum and, classical physics model. Sure. While, they are deeply into this electroplasmic universe model of physics, which is the true model. And another thing he mentioned was that they wanted people that had not been, corrupted by this incorrect education. That is very common in the programs. That's why they were taking children in, because we were not front-loaded yet on different religious ideas, social programming. A lot of that hadn't occurred yet. So they had basically a blank slate to work with.
It is interesting, isn't it? The government studies that have shown that if they did disclosure, the two groups that would be the most hard hit by it would be religious people and scientists.
Yep, the academics.
Okay, so now you heard him, and he worked for the secret government. Then you have this whistleblower by the name of Corey Good. This is another guy who was a part of the secret government, and he's talking about how advanced they are. How advanced they are.
This is, you've probably seen this on the internet. This is very old and somewhat accurate of the maglev or magnetic trains that go underground. They go to all these different bases, and it shows it going off to down to Central and South America. But I haven't seen any maps that show the details of South America. That goes through a lot through Brazil, Argentina. So a lot of the training that we had when we were taken underground, we were interfacing with technologies that there would be like plates that you put your hand on, or two little protrusions in a chair that connect to, you know, the dimples in the back of your shoulders. That's an area where a lot of nerves crisscross. And that is a place to where if they have this node, this metal node, positive, negative, going that you lay back against, and also plates that you can put your hands on, it is a neurological interface to technology. The things you see out of your eyes, you completely believe, you hear, you smell, you taste. They can manipulate all of that. One of the major tests is for you to be able to determine when you've been put into some sort of a virtual reality simulation. They're so real, it's very difficult. And of course, in 1952, the spacecraft that flew over Washington, those were manned by Germans. The Germans learned very quickly that the highest secret in the land was the existence of ETs. And it's not because they don't think we can handle that ETs are out there. That's BS. That's what they tell us. You can't handle the truth. The real reason is because they know that we'll start asking, how did they get here? And then they have to release free energy. And of course, we know that that's how they control the planet, and they don't want to lose control. This is what the Lunar Operation Command looked like at the end of my time there. It originally was built into a swastika by the Germans, and then we built it out. Here's an animation. There was a protrusion in the middle of the crater that was a hole that went down underneath, and only part of the base is above ground. The rest is underground, and it's built out in the shape of a bell. It gets wider and wider, and there were at least 11 levels. I was not granted access, and they have it's on the dark side of the moon at about the 10 o'clock position, and they use cloaking and shielding devices to where if a satellite went over, it would just see a mirage.
So he's talking about the secret government has a base on the moon. The master teacher also said they set up on Mars as well. So this is what we're dealing with, guys. This is where they're at. Their level of technology and the fact that they go out their way to keep this hidden from the general public. I mean, that's what we're dealing with. You know, it is what it is. Let's keep going. Question. How does the reality of the secret government affect us? The problem with the reality of the secret government is that the powers that be are hiding from the public the reality of existence. Billions of people on earth believe in the unseen God concept, creating only humanity and no one else. This is what people believe, right? When we look at the religious mind for the last 2,000 years, we see war, slavery, abuse, persecution of people simply because they may not serve a certain god or a foreign culture. There are countless millions of people dead because of religious persecution, all due to the fact that people are confused to the reality of existence. If people knew that the secret government served at the pleasure of ET overlords and that the so-called God they are worshiping are really ETs who are using people for their own selfish reasons, our reality of life would be so much different. This would end wars among peoples and focus our attention on the secret government and these ET overlords, as they show in the movies like Stargate, where humans overthrow their ET so-called gods. This knowledge would reshape world's peoples as we know it. People would stop working for money. The world cultures would shift because we now know the level of technology that exists, which would change everyone's lives for the better. The concept of life and death would shift because humanity would now know that people are really incarnated spirit beings that go from incarnation to incarnation, right? Knowing all these facts, we must ask ourselves, what are we going to do about this reality? Are we going to be just another generation that allowed the lie of reality to continue? Or are we going to take actions and make the truth known to the world so that we can all change for the better? Our suffering because of these lies is real, but is it painful enough to demand change? The master teacher has been teaching these facts for over 50 years now, but Black people sadly and blindly still support white rulership. Black people refuse to research these facts to either prove or disprove, but rather attack the messenger rather than fact check the message. What will be of us if we continue to ignore these facts because the secret government are getting more powerful with each passing year with their advancements in AI technology? Not to mention, we make it so easy for them to monitor us and predict our behaviors since we tell everything about ourselves on these social media platforms. We must wake up. Question: what is the solution to this problem called the secret government? Answer: the solution is right knowledge, as we have been teaching for the past 50 years. Remember, it is our ignorance of existence is our enemy. Once we choose to embrace the power within, then and only then can we fight this secret government hell-bent on our self-destruction. The secret government answers to powerful ET overlords who are not friends of humanity. But the secret that humanity does not realize is that the power of these ETs come from our lack of lustful self-control. Conquer your lustful desires and you conquer these negative spirit beings, also known as ETs. Our ancestors knew this right knowledge, but we forgot these things. Remember last week, we spoke about the power of NoopooH, aka Black Power. So I say all this just to bring it back full circle that there is nothing to fear from the secret government and whoever they serve, as long as we stay true to who we are by natural nature. Remember, knowledge rules ignorance. And mind your mind for the jewel of your soul. Okay. So that was a lot. I hope that was helpful. I hope that was insightful. And as I always say, guys, definitely rewatch this over. Grab a family, friend, whoever. Show them the lectures, let them see this, get their opinions, talk to them. Because the only way this is going to change for us is we get this information out to our people. It is our ignorance that is our problem. It is our ignorance that is our problem. We have abilities, we have powers that we're not using, that we're not even aware of. The master teacher has been teaching this, but we're not. Now look at this book. This is from the Man from the Planet Risk. We put this in a lot of books. The master talks about our abilities to develop ourselves spiritually, to go out of body, right? to be able to go out of body. This is how we are able to make contact with our higher spiritual family, our version of ETs, the Natharu, who exist on the higher realms. If we would learn and if we would take the spiritual teachings seriously, if we would just take these things seriously and put it into practice that the master teacher has been trying to educate us about, we can deal with the issues we're dealing with on this planet. But unfortunately, we're not there yet. We're not there. I'm not going to stop. I'm going to do my best to explain to our people as much as I can what we can do, what we're dealing. First, we got to acknowledge what we're dealing with, and then how can we respond to what we're dealing with. It's about education, It's about education. That's the bottom line. So, if no one has any questions, or concerns, I'll address any kind of questions that anyone has. If not, we're going to close out in our closing prayer that we do. We do our 9 o'clock prayers. For those who do not know, we have our prayer rituals that we do at 9 a.m., 3 p.m., and 9 p.m. And for those who are able to wake up, well, we do it at 3 a.m., excuse me. Okay. And the purpose of the rituals is for spiritual development. Okay. The purpose of the rituals is for spiritual development. It's very important, and again, I hope this discussion was very fruitful. Okay, question. Hold on. Let me see. I'm sorry, guys. Yeah, let me let me go back. I'm sorry. Let's see. Question. Eddie Murph asked a question earlier. In this case, what was the role of Barack Obama? And again, I talked about, I hope I answered it in our discussion, that Barack is just like anyone else. He's a puppet, Presidents are not elected, they are selected. Presidents are not elected, as our good brother Dick Gregory taught us. Presidents are selected, right? The president is selected, whether it be the Republican or the Democratic Party. Remember, they only give you 2 choices. So it doesn't matter which one you choose, because both were already selected. So keep that in mind. The president doesn't change anything. He's just a figurehead. Okay. Eat them off. Let's see. They also have the pyramids on the US dollar. What is the correlation? The correlation to the pyramids in the US dollar represents the secret societies. It goes back to the Skull and Bones. You have the Freemasons, you have the Illuminati, you have the Hellfire Club. For those guys, look up the Hellfire Club. Benjamin Franklin was a part of the Hellfire Club. Okay. And go research the fact that they located one of Benjamin Franklin homes. They dug up, they was remodeling a home. They found a whole bunch of dead bodies under his home. Research that, guys. Benjamin Franklin. Everybody talking about the Benjamins wanting to spend that money. That guy was a demon. One of the so-called founding fathers, a demon. Okay. So keep that in mind. Benjamin Franklin. Let's see. I made some questions about. Okay, yeah, that's what's up. I hope I helped you. Eat him off. Okay, T Tiger says, yeah, you dropped the mic on this one. This is the nail in the coffin. Also, that's what's up. Appreciate that. Much love. Gawada question: is it possible for us to overthrow this secret government? Yes, we can. Oh, we have the power. That's what we've been teaching, but we won't acknowledge our own personal power, guys. If we don't do the rituals, if we don't develop ourselves spiritually, this is the only way we'll be able to do battle with these people. There is no other way to do battle with them. You know, we have to develop ourselves spiritually. Our people love the circus too much. They got their heads in the cloud. They always in the clubs. They're in the fantasy land. Our people got to wake up from fantasy land. For those who are true seekers of the facts, those who are true seekers of knowledge, we have a hidden power, and we have to how can I say, we have to develop ourselves spiritually so we can give birth to that hidden power. Guys, really study the lecture we did last week, right? The black power. What is that black power? We have to acknowledge that within ourselves. You know, we must acknowledge our power within. I can't stress that enough. That is the only way we're going to be able to do battle with these beings, right? I just hope that you guys understand what we're up against. That's why I took the time out to do this discussion. You know, so now we're clear on what we're fighting or who we're fighting, and we can beat them. We can beat them, man. They're afraid of us. Trust me. That's why they spend so much time keeping the black woman and the black man down. You have the power to overthrow them, but you first must develop yourself spiritually. I can't stress that enough. Study all the lectures we did on spiritual development, guys. All y'all. Take your time out and study these discussions, right? Okay. T Tiger said, teacher, people minds need to be spiritually open to connect and not be so surprised. They must meditate every day, go inside the darkness and not be afraid. That's the key. That's why this is why they had us. This is why they tell us to be afraid of the darkness so that we won't go into the darkness. That's their trick. That's their biggest trick that they play on us, on our psyche. And we got to overcome that as a people. We have to overcome the programming. And guys, it's about the children. Don't forget the children. The children they're pure. If you guys reflect on what the guy said, what's his name? Corey Good said that the secret government likes dealing with the children because children aren't programmed. Well, it's the same thing with us. It's important for us to deal with our children so that they're not programmed by the system, by the media. The social media is really doing a number on us. The master teacher always taught us, save the children. It's always been about the children, guys. As much as it's been about ourselves, the children are key because they're pure. They can really develop themselves if you help them. And they're to be the ones to fight this dragon. We're dealing with a serious monster out here. This beast is real. It's not fake. It's real. And I hope we did a good job today exposing the reality of what we're dealing with. I hope we understand this, guys. I really do. But on that note, we're going to keep it moving, right? Until next week. You know, we're gonna keep it moving. We're not gonna stop. You know, we're not gonna stop. And so we're gonna end it up with again our prayer ritual. Okay. Let's see where we at. All right. Bade kalal namasat Wu-Sabat Aman Kasamun Shalal Pa'ut. Pa Takyud. Anuki Jawef Pa Ashuk Impa Pa'ut. Wu Kalat Ashuk Kawun Jawef Nia. Anuki Kasamun Impa Pa'ut. Wu Pa Pa'ut Kawun Kasamun Im Nia. Anuki Wahu Ama Pa Pa'ut. Wu Pa Pa'ut Kawun Wahu Ama Nia. Naku Kador Naju Ama Kasamun Impa Pa'ut. Wu Kabu Ama Muskasun. Naku Kador Kawan Kale Pafaf Naku Daya Jawep Pa Pa'ut. Ama Waset Ama Dayani Kawun Lake Bakui Jawep Pa Pa'ut. Anuki Yababi Nafasni Pa Pa'ut Kawun. Anuki Pa Pa'ut Kador Naku Kador Pa Pa'ut Amul Nakuk Amul Lahehum Menehnun. Lahehum Menehnun Ahumata Korehum, Ahumata Korekum, Ahumata Korenun, Ahumata Juefnia, Ahumata Nia Wu Anuki Hum, Yaye Ashuk Re'e, Asmua Jayenun, Yaye Nataru Afuknun, Anunata Mukra Ukum, Yaye Nataru Afuknun, Afuknun, Yaye Nataru Nun, Anun, Atun, Atun, Amun. Namazo Wahu, Yaye Mufaku, Yaye Hu, Yaye Nataru, Yaye Soye, Yaye Nataru, Yaye Hika, Yaye Nataru, Ankum Atapa Mufaku, Yaye Hu, Yaye Nataru, Ankum Atapa Mufaku, Wu Anun Ata Mukra Ukum, Wu Ankum Ata Musanun, Yaye Hu, Yaye Nataru, Aro Muklasnum Atum Re'e, Yaye Hu, Yaye Nataru, Namazo Atu, Aro and Hu. Yaye Mukdamu Afutnun, Ankum Mane Yake Laduda Muslafunun, Wu Musaunun, Mane Yake Suwuru Paba, Mane Yake Kawuna Ka'u, Mane Yake Ata Akak, Mane Yake Kawuna Bashawu Damam, Yaye Nataru Mukdamunun, Aro Muftanun, Anhu Kawun Manza Mane Pa Nataru, Aro Anhu, Anhu Kawun Baba Yananun, Aro Anhu, Anhu Kawun Atum Re'e, Haro Anhu Kawun Haro, Namazo Dalu. Yaye Nataru Muslafunun, Afutnun Mane Pa Mujwa'u, Afutnun Mane Ga Ha'an, Yaye Nataru Afutnun, Mane Sayah Yara, Afutnun Afutniya, Afutniya, Yaye Nataru Nun, Namazo Rabo Pa Takmui. Nakuk Talub Tahmui Bi Pa Nataru, Mane Pa La'an Lawi Tananu, Kale Ranam Atni at the Lahe Pa Nataru, Wu Kale Namazo Atni at the Lahe Kayat Iatun Laye Pa Nataru, Pa Sawa Wu Pa Toro. Panem Misfa Kawun, Pa Sawa Wu Pa Toro, Z Kawuna Nazula Lahe Antkun, Mane Mispat Wu Masa, Ama Hade An Wu Daman Mane Moslafu Kum, Wu Nataru, Ajula Yena Fasu Kum, Afuk Shane Kawun Kum, Pa Sawa Wu Pa Toro, Pa Hade An Wu Pa Damal, An Nun Tawa Ankum, Lahe Panan Damal Wu Shafe, An Nun Tawa Ankum, Lahe Tem Nasui Nun, An Nun Tawa Ankum, Lahe Ashuk Kuma, Ankum at the Muslafu Nun, Anun at the Mukra Ukum, Anun Talab Nasar Kuma, Anun Talub Nasar Kuma, and so Nun Kahen Taru, and so Nun Muslafu Nun, Anun at the Muspatu, Anun, Atun, Atun, Amun. Yaye Nataru Nun, Yaye Mufta'u, Yaye Nataru. Yaye Atum Re'e, Yaye Natar, Yaye Nun, Yaye Natar, Yaye Nun Tat, Yaye Natar Tat, Yaye Ha, Yaye Natar, Yaye Hatat, Yaye Natar Tat, Yaye Kak, Yaye Natar, Yaye Kak Tat, Yaye Natar Tat, Yaye Amun, Yaye Natar, Yaye Amun Tat, Yaye Natar Tat, Yaye Atum, Yaye Natar, Yaye Shishash, Yaye Natar, Yaye Tafaf Natat, Yaye Natar Tat, Yaye Sabab, ya ye nathar, ya ye natat, ya ye nathar tat, ya ye arash tat, ya ye nathar tat, ya ye asar, ya ye nathar, ya ye nabab tat had tat, ya ye nathar tat, ya ye satak, ya ye nathar, ya ye hara, ya ye nathar, ya ye hatwi, ya ye nathar, ya ye anaktat, ya ye nathar tat, ya ye ahaharatwi, ya ye nathar, ya ye nafartum, ya ye nathar, ya ye menthu, ya ye nathar, ya ye bapti, ya ye nathar, ya ye sakam tat, ya ye nathar tat, ya ye hatat haratat, ya ye nathar tat, ya ye aba ibis, ya ye nathar, ya ye patah, ya ye nathar, ya ye bastat, ya ye nathar tat, ya ye imhatap, ya ye nathar, ya ye hu, ya ye nathar, ya ye matat, ya ye nathar tat, ya ye mahat, ya ye nathar tat, ya ye kafre e, ya ye nathar, ya ye miskanat, ya ye nathar tat, ya ye horaye tat, ya ye nathar tat, ya ye kintamin to you, ya ye nathar, ya ye hika'a, ya ye nathar tat, ya ye nathar tat, ya ye nathar tat, ya ye ma'at, ya ye nathar tat, ya ye horanan tat, ya ye nathar tat, ya ye she, ya ye nathar tat, ya ye sashat, ya ye nathar tat, ya ye mafdat, ya ye nathar tat, ya ye sabak, ya ye nathar, ya ye anap, ya ye nathar, ya ye khanum, ya ye nathar, ya ye khanas, ya ye nathar, ya ye patatanun, ya ye nathar, ya ye soye, ya ye nathar, ya ye haktat, ya ye nathar tat, ya ye amas, ya ye nathar, ya ye saraptwi, ya ye nathar, ya ye atum re'e, ya ye nathar tat, ya ye dahutwi, ya ye nathar, ya ye patatawarat, ya ye nathar tat, ya ye sakar tat, ya ye nathar tat, ya ye ha, ya ye nathar, ya ye nahab ka'a, ya ye nathar, ya ye sakar, ya ye nathar, ya ye ba'a, ya ye nathar, ya ye akar, ya ye nathar, ya ye imharatat, ya ye nathar tat, ya ye wapawatat, ya ye nathar, ya ye sakat hatap tat, ya ye nathar tat, ya ye meritat sakar tat, ya ye nathar tat, ya ye saye tat, ya ye nathar tat, ya ye garatat, ya ye nathar tat, ya ye asat inu, ya ye nathar, ya ye bahatat, ya ye nathar tat, ya ye khanem tat, ya ye nathar tat, ya ye manak tat, ya ye nathar tat, ya ye khamem, ya ye nathar, ya ye mahatwi, ya ye nathar, ya ye kabefsin and afaf, ya ye nathar, ya ye damata afaf, ya ye nathar, ya ye ameritat, ya ye nathar tat, ya ye nasat, ya ye nathar, ya ye imdadatat, ya ye nathar tat, ya ye nakakbatat, ya ye nathar tat, ya ye sakhatat, ya ye nathar tat, ya ye anaktat, ya ye nathar tat, ya ye dadad, ya ye nathar, ya ye tum, ya ye nathar, ya ye wahoo, ya ye nathar, ya ye yasas, ya ye nathar, ya ye anak, ya ye nathar, ya ye afnuit, ya ye nathar, ya ye satat, ya ye nathar tat, ya ye sakatwi, ya ye nathar, ya ye immaat, ya ye nathar, ya ye nana, ya ye nathar, ya ye imnuit, ya ye nathar, ya ye imsataktwi, ya ye nathar, ya ye muktaltat, ya ye nathar tat, ya ye rahashafaf, ya ye nathar, ya ye maratwi, ya ye nathar, Ya ye amun ore ya ye natar. Yehu Anu Ata Kaled Jawef Pa'ut Ahnun Re Ahtun Re Ahtun Re Ahmun Re Jennifer. Okay, for those who are not familiar with our rituals, it is imperative. That's what our doctrine is all about. It's learning how to develop yourself spiritually. And this is why we do our rituals. This is the importance of it. You know, it's the whole point of getting to right knowledge is to understand the nature of yourself, that we are incarnated spirit beings and we have the ability to develop ourselves. We have the ability to make contact with our ancestors who do exist on higher dimensions. But it's imperative that you learn these rituals. It's imperative that you practice these rituals. You develop them. Again, it takes a minimum of 30 to 90 days to begin to see results. But it's real. The results are real. And you'll begin to see a transformation. The whole goal is it helps to expand your consciousness. This is one of the challenges I would argue a lot of people have a hard time with our doctrine. Is because we're dealing with subject matter and concepts that is not familiar to the average public. But as you do certain things designed to help you expand your consciousness, then what we teach becomes a lot more clear. I can't stress this enough. Okay, other statements. Yeah, dope like on this one. Now, orphan, commodities, possible. Teaches the people. Very good job. Explore. Thanks so much. I'm professor. I would buy this if it was on DVDs. So the book content every house should have. Question from Nikan Delucian. If I pronounced that name correct, I'm sorry if I mispronounce it. Let's say, have secret societies known of Yanun coming? They sure did know about him coming. They didn't know. They knew he was coming as an incarnated being. They didn't know what human being Yanun was going to incarnate. They figured it out, obviously, in the 1990s. This is why they locked him up. They figured out who he was. That's why the master teacher had to design our doctrine in such a way that made it difficult for them to identify him. You know, yes, the bottom line is they knew. They really did. They knew he was coming. They was looking for him. That's why they put out in the 70s or the FBI put out, they was searching for that so-called Black Messiah. You know, they was looking for that leader who had that right knowledge. Because remember, they knew the knowledge. They knew this information that they was hiding from us. And all the master teacher, if you look at most of our books, all he was doing was exposing the information that was hidden from us, our people who weren't aware of so much of this information. This is one of the reasons why the master teacher gets accused of plagiarism, because he was researching a lot of that information that wasn't available to the general public. At least black people didn't know, and he was uncovering all those things, exposing it, and trying to explain to us what was really going on in the world, what our role in the world was, and what our responsibility was. Because it goes back to our whole doctrine had one real agenda, which is resurrection, for our people to restore their divine mind, to restore our right knowledge. Because the dragon, the demons only rule us because of our ignorance, guys. Right? They only rule us because of our ignorance. That's just the reality of it. Stephen Cole, the Caucasians are considered albino Asians or coming from Indians, or was they created from Pleiadians through the Patahites? All of the above is true. Okay, all of the above is true. The Hindus had that Pleiadian genetics in their genes, so one of the reasons why they were giving birth to these albino children. When they gave birth to these albino children, these ETs took those children and did genetic modifications. They did experiments. That's what, when you study the Sumerian tablets talking about the Adam and Eve project, the whole Adam and Eve project was about developing this Nordic being, this Mukasu. They were gene splicing with they used our genetics, the Thais genes. They used the genetics, what they call the Neanderthals, those ape-like humanoids, and they mixed their genetics. The Nordics mixed their genes, and so they in essence they were altering these albino children to produce the Caucasian as we know him today. And so they was splicing their genes with different animal DNA, these albino children. So when they talk about that sons of God story we talked about in our lecture in Genesis chapter 6, it talks about it. Revelations chapter 12 talks about it. The book of Enoch talks about it. The book of Jubilee talks about it. These ETs came down to this planet, started raping females, having sex, producing these children. So like the story of Cain and Abel, Cain wasn't the child of Adam. Cain was actually the child of a being called Nanar, one of those ETs that came down. If you research the Jews know these stories. They have them in the Talmud. Talks about that Adam was not the father of Cain, that Satan was the father of Cain. Do the research, guys. They just keep this information hidden from the general public, and that's all the master teachers have been doing, is exposing these facts, these actual facts, And so we're gonna keep it going. We got so much more information to cover. We're not gonna stop, guys. But I repeat, study these discussions, rewatch these lectures. I always say I watch my own lectures more than once. Take your time, analyze it, and like I said, have your family, friends, whomever, help people watch these lectures, spread the word, because as you guys can see, not enough people are watching these things, our lections, and we put out so much information, so much important and pertinent information our people need. They need this right knowledge that's going to help them in their decisions. Our people need to start making intelligent decisions. Like, stop. Why are we voting? Why are people still voting for these demons? The government is fake anyway. They're not. It's a secret government that runs everything. What's wrong with our people? That's interesting question you ask. What movies or documentaries talk about the chosen one coming? They've had quite a few movies that hint about this expect. Well, the movie The Dune. That movie Dune is about that chosen one coming. That, if anybody's seen the movie Dune, if you saw the original one that came out in the 1980s, it was talking about this savior being coming to the planet, right? and then the new Dune that just came out this year, it came out in I think November or whatever. Check that movie out, Dune, because that movie Dune kind of goes into it. They did a movie also back in the 80s. I think it was called The Brother from Another Planet. I think that's the name of it. Some people are familiar with it, you know, and so there are quite a few movies. Yeah, I've actually, the whole Matrix movie is about the master teacher, to be honest with you. It's really about him. That whole Neo, the chosen one who's going to restore righteousness back to the planet. You know, and so that's all Yanun represents. He represents the expansion of the conscious mind for Black people to understand that the power of God is within them, within themselves. You are that being inside you. All the master teacher came to do is re-educate us about our true nature and what our real abilities are and how to develop those abilities and how to open your third eye and make contact with your oversoul and make contact with your ancestors who exist on the higher realms. Because here's the key, guys. What most people don't understand when they talk about spirituality is they don't understand the different types of spirit beings. The 9 ether spirit beings versus the 6 ether spirit beings. You have to know the difference between these different spirit forces on who you should contact. That's what makes the master teacher unique in our doctrine, explaining the difference in what beings you should be dealing with and the beings you need to avoid, because a lot of our people are not clear on that. They're not. Question, T Tiger. How many ETs do you think is on the planet today? That's a good question. There's a lot. I know the master teacher has taught us, you know, there's a lot of people you think are human that are not from Earth. There are a lot of humanoid ETs running around this planet. They're in the entertainment world. They're in they're in the news. They're in politics. They're all over. You know, I can't name how many. I know it's a lot. I know this whole planet is infested with these ETs. If anyone does some research in the subject matter, you'll get more clarity on the subject, you know. But our reality, our people they're just not acknowledging reality. Is really sad, you know. We need to. I wish we would wake up. Hopefully we will. But until then, family, it's time for me to sign off. We're gonna keep this discussion going. We're not gonna stop. We're gonna pick this up next week, right? We're gonna pick this up next week. I'm not sure what we're gonna do next week, you know, but we're gonna have our discussion and we're gonna keep it going. I'm not going nowhere, you know. That's right, Apex. Valenthor was a humanoid ETs. I believe he was from Venus. You do have a lot of Venetians, people from Venus on this planet. The master teacher did teach us that Elvis Presley, I think he was from Venus. Elizabeth Taylor was from Venus. The guy by the name of David Bowie, he was also a Venetian. These are just some of the people in the entertainment world that actually ETs. That's what that movie Men in Black was trying to, you know, explain, that there are a lot of humans running around that are really ETs. So, you know, this is real. This is real. But until then, guys, till then, family, next week, much love. You know, bless you all. Be safe, be strong. And we're gonna win this war, as our brother Young Elder talks about. We're gonna win because we can dance and they can't. I like that. Let's keep it moving. Till then, why do?